7 a.m. Tuesday, October 1st, 2024, and we have a quorum present. Up first is going to be the approval of the minutes of September 3rd meeting. We entertain a motion from Robinson, second from Watson. Any discussion, comments, corrections? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye. Any opposed? Passes. Up next is the director's report. Quite a few things in here today. I think we'll just take them, well, I'll turn it over to Eric and I'll let you take them one at a time and we can stop in if we need.
Sure. I guess the item number one has been coming up, especially with the budget season. So I know the county administrator's been talking to the mayor. And so I just put a little update in where our last discussions were with Dave at the landfill and staff here at wastewater and myself. And to kind of get that discussion, probably back up and moving, as I think we need a regional solution to potential regulations, more regulations coming down. There's some other items on here as well, if you'd like to discuss any of those as well. Some updates. So I don't know if you wanted to start. I know there seemed to be some discussion wanted to be had on leachate acceptance from the landfill, and so.
Mr. Robinson?
Well, I know we've got Administrator Leonard and Dave Hagenbusher from the Solid Waste Department. Could we hear from them?
Sure.
Thank you, members. Thanks for having us. I don't have much. I think Eric kind of does well in summarizing the issue, really looking for a more comprehensive solution. I'll restate the obvious. I think the city and the county have a longstanding positive relationship outside of the solid waste department and the city, but I think it certainly bears noting the strong relationship we've had in the past and we continue to have. I'm a Wausau resident, apart from being the county administrator. City of Wausau residents, I think we all appreciate the reduced tipping rates that the city receives through our partnership with the landfill. The city and county have worked well with reduced rates for special refuse that has come to the solid waste department for projects that I know are of city concern or city focus. The Wausau Community Partners Campus, the Wausau Mall, and probably most dear to many of the people here and dear to your hearts, the wastewater facility in 2021. Had conversations beginning in 2021 about accepting waste, and over 2 years took special soils at no charge at solid waste, which if you look at our tipping fees now, it's about $1.7 million worth of value. So our relationship is longstanding. And to Eric's point, leachate is a concern. Certainly it's something at the solid waste department that is as the mayor referenced budgets, or Eric referenced budgets, it's a big part of our budget, finding a way to deal with that leachate. And right now we have other municipal partners that we truck that leachate to. And we're really hoping that we can find a way to work together collaboratively to address some of those issues. Selfishly, I'm hoping we can be a bit more prompt than perhaps a full-blown engineering study. We do have a lot of the data that Eric alludes to in his report that we'd like to sit down. I think there's also a timeliness factor here with the regulations that are due to come out from the state of Wisconsin relative to the Innovation Fund. Right now, we know what our cost is to truck that leachate, what we pay to have that leachate treated in Plover. It's about 2 cents, 2/10 of a cent a gallon, so we can give you volumes. Have a very open discussion about at what rate does it make sense for the city of Wausau to, if at all, to accept that leachate and what things you would need to have in place. I know one thing that, and I'm the least informed person in the room relative to leachate, but Dave can talk about is the idea of kind of metering that in, whether that would be something that would work for you. I know that in speaking with Dave, that's the widespread or very common solution for large municipalities and landfills near large municipalities, simply injecting it into the wastewater stream far enough away from the treatment center that it essentially dilutes during that course. But I know the city has, and this commission has a lot of discussion relative to ensuring effluent meets standards. So my hope is that we can have, and this isn't agendized for action, but my hope is we can have some prompt discussions, because if those regulations come out from the state of Wisconsin relative to the Innovation Fund at the end of this month, and we can come up with a plan that would allow us to say, hey, what would a cost savings approach be through the state? There's a potential that the state would help us put that in place. So I appreciate you guys taking up this issue, and thank Eric for his comments in the director's report. My hope, again, is that we can move relatively quickly between the professional staff, between Eric and his department and Dave. But we're happy to answer any questions, and certainly if Dave has additional information to talk about kind of what our current state is, we can do that. But simple, high level, again, we pay 0.2 cents, I believe, is that amount that from our current municipal partners, certainly being closer to Wausau than where we're taking it now. We'd like to figure out how we can inject that about 0.5%, right, of your daily volume. We're about less than 0.5% of that overall volume of leachate, but we fully recognize leachate isn't general wastewater. So how, if at all, can we make that work for both of us, I think is, there's a potential for, I think, significant continued economic benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's interesting that one of the solutions is potentially metering in. So I don't know if Ben would have a comment on that. Would we require some holding tanks, or would it be metered in from a truck if the truck had to loiter in the dump station for a period of time? Could you walk us through how you'd envision doing that?
Sure. I'd be glad to. In conversation with Dave this morning, we had actually discussed that possible action, how that would look. And we were thinking parking a tanker there and letting it drizzle in or flow in slowly throughout the day. Would have to see how it would impact the plant, I guess. Problem being is in the winter months, tankers, things tend to freeze up in sub-zero temps, so that was something that we'd have to pilot. And as Lance mentioned, 0.5% of our forward floors flow is something we'd probably have to look at, maybe up to 1%. And then we'd have to see the variation, how it impacts our ultraviolet disinfection, and that with the turbidity levels of the leachate in the summer months. So,
Does the flow change winter to summer? Or is it pretty constant all year round? Dave?
Thank you. The flow usually slows down in the winter, and we have been doing a number of things on the facility to reduce our overall volumes. We used to be somewhere around the 6 million gallons per year, but we're down under 10 million gallons per year now, and continuing to make efforts in that. And I just wanted to reiterate what our administrator had said. We're very grateful that that Eric and Ben have been able to work with us. We've had multiple meetings on this. This isn't the first time that we've been at this commission with this sort of approach. This is something that is really regional. We're trying to find an alternative solution to what we're currently doing, because we are all serving the public. We are all trying to keep costs low for our constituents, for our citizens, so that we don't have to build an on-site treatment facility where it's then going to have to hike the cost of solid waste coming into the landfill. We're all facing regulations that are coming in down the road, and we don't exactly understand what those look like and what that means for everybody. But trying to work together, and I think, being able to look at the numbers and really understand is there opportunity to work together. I know Mr. Lemon, had suggested possibly a 2-year timeline. I think that's something that we might be able to expedite with our assistance. If there's studies that we can do, that we can help even fund, to try to provide some additional support in that realm. I think there's opportunity there, and I also want to mention the Clean Water Fund that we both provided applications to, part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. I think that's also something that we could also look into. I believe it's due at the end of this month. But if there was an opportunity for for additional treatment or metering, kind of back to the point of a metering station, there's also, I don't know if there's any possibility of offloading into a further city limit lift station somewhere, where at that time that leachate would be diluted by the time it finally got to the plant. And even going bigger picture, trying to spread this out, I don't think the solid waste department is looking to send everything all at once. I think it would be more of a phasing it in. Start with 1 load a day or 1 load a week, and then slowly over time see how it impacts the plant, so that it's not a big shot all at once. But happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Thanks, Dave. It seems like you've pondered some things, and as Lance mentioned, I think the experts are in the room here with Ben and Dave and Eric. Commissioners, your thoughts. Mr. Robinson.
I'd like to have a work group or a group just look at the issue. I think that there are a number of issues. We're in the process of getting a new WPDS permit, which could be impacted by the leachate and other factors, and we don't know the impact of the GAC system and pulling out the GAC and the resin on a long-term basis and reducing the influent into the plant and therefore the effluent. We don't know where biosol standards are coming. I know that there's concern in several of the towns around the area about accepting waste. But I think it would be worthwhile for each of the parties to sort of identify those issues. We, as a utility, have issues with, if we can't take biosolids, where can we place them? Can we get an agreement that if we can't land spread them, we might have a disposal option, and what would that look like? But just to explore the various opportunities for cooperation, and I hadn't thought of the innovative grant, but there is significant funding on the state level. There's also the contaminants of emerging concern funding on the state level. Are there opportunities for us to address it? Neither party is generating the PFAS in the leachate or in the effluent, but they're both being asked to address it in different manners. And I know that there are efforts to classify PFAS as a hazardous waste, but there's generally been discussion about municipal exemptions for landfills and water treatment plants. But we can look at all of those legal issues, and I think perhaps come forward with an outline of where there are opportunities to cooperate, identify what sort of provisions need to be in an agreement, and how we would deal with it if we were to, for instance, exceed the surface water standards, and what we might do in those cases, and how and under what conditions would they accept waste and products generated from the utility at the landfill.
Mr. Jean.
I've got a quick question, and I'll offer some comments. Ben or Eric, have we seen the final draft of our discharge permit?
No, we have not.
Okay, and any chance that any of the conditions associated with it we'd be maybe hurt by getting the leachate?
I guess there's two ways of looking at it. There is a potential it may hurt us, but in the grand scheme of things, from what I understand, with the issuance of the new discharge permit, there's going to be a 2-year testing period. And from the data that's collected over those 2 years, monthly for 2 years, there's going to be a P99 calculated as far as what we're going to be allowed to discharge with the PFOA, PFOS. And the biggest question is, do we accept the leachate prior? So those figures, that data includes that, or do we wait till afterwards to see where we're at with a P99?
Those are excellent comments. I would offer that we don't live in a vacuum. We we probably contribute a lot of the waste that goes to the landfill. I assume that's where our waste goes, solid waste. And I would share the sentiments of John that we should try to figure out how we can work together.
Correct.
Thank you.
Eric?
Yeah. I think, when we look at this seems to be like it's going to be a step process, right? Like, we may have to look at an interim or a short-term solution, but we always, as we look at these things, just like we did with PFAS and other treatment type options we did with the water and wastewater, is we have to look at a long-term solution, right? I don't see the long-term solution being there for a couple of years. But I do think that if we have discussions about what happens between now and then, as we work towards that long-term solution, I think can be very beneficial, not only for collecting data on our side, in determining how this is going to affect and how we have to change treatment, but also determining maybe what the long-term solution is, whether that's a centrally located equalization basin, whether that's a couple different discharge points in the system, whatever that is, right? But those are solutions that we would have to take a look at as we move through that. But I agree, this is a regional issue. This is not, just a county. And so, I even talked with Dave about having, a pipe network of force mains and stuff coming directly to the city of Wausau, as a long-term solution. Economically, I don't know if that's feasible or just trucking it is a better option, but, we have had some good discussions, in the past, and I think that, us continuing and opening up that dialogue again, I think we're going to have to look at both. We're going to have to look at what we do in the near term as well as the long term at the same time to come up with a good solution for long term.
So are we good giving direction to staff to continue that work, or did you have something else in mind, Mr. Robinson?
Well, I'd like to offer a motion, but it's not agendized for action, so maybe if we could ask staff to come back at the next meeting with potential framework for progressing with the discussions, and maybe work between Dave and Eric on developing that.
Reasonable? Okay, thank you. Mr. Force?
Just a couple questions on Eric's report here. I just want to be clear as to where we stand. In the first paragraph, the landfill was going to sample the leachate for PFAS as part of the testing, and then those results were going to be shared with the wastewater plant and with the commission. That apparently hasn't taken place. And then the second paragraph leads off, our request was to have the landfill complete their testing, and we can review the results. And I'm assuming that that hasn't taken place either. I just want to know where we stand on these requests for testing.
Right. I think the county has done that testing. I think that's part of our, next discussions as far as what those results, those analytics are, as we move forward. Okay.
Is that where we stand?
That's where we stand, yeah, currently. Yep.
Thank you. Anything further on that leachate issue? Let's bring her back. I agree, we have to, it's got to go somewhere. Let's see if we can be part of the solution regionally. Thank you. Any other, you want to list off the rest, or is anyone?
Yeah, so I had a couple updates. Lead service line replacement program, the staffing additions for water and sewer, all approved for the city council. Next step is to advertise those positions and begin onboarding those new positions. Quick update on utility finances. We'll have further discussion in an agenda item on the operation budget And construction updates for the drinking water, our granular activated carbon project, and then wastewater updates for the lift stations, and also some updates for the, from Veolia, had some warranty work and stuff done, so that they honored that, so that was good.
Mr. Robinson?
I just had a question relative to the shaft, the broken shaft in the gearbox. Was that just faulty equipment? Was it, it's under warranty now, but are there reasons for us to be concerned about long-term functioning of those?
I like to believe that we're not gonna have any more issues with it. It's where the dried sludge comes out of the dryer. It's called the extraction screw. So this would be the second time that the shaft is broken on us. So Veolia took another look at the engineering of it and decided that the shaft needed to be bigger and better, let's just say. And they also included a heavier duty gearbox to go along with it. So this is the second day of the new system running. So everything's looking good right now. So fingers crossed that we won't have any more issues with it. Otherwise, Veolia will stand behind it. So,
Mr. Force?
I wanted to, on the lead service line replacement program, just make an observation. I'm very pleased with what I'm seeing from CIP and also the Aquaflow website. I have some concerns that the Aquaflow website is easily accessible off the city website. I'm not convinced that it is, so I don't know how much traffic the Aquaflow website is receiving from the average person out there in the system. I don't know whether the Aquaflow website can be made more prominent on the city website, but it does contain good and useful information. I just don't think we have set it up so that the city residents have as easy access to it as they might.
I appreciate that, Jim. I'll look into that about, more, yeah.
All right, Director's report. Any other comments on utility operations? Seeing none. Item 3 is next. We had scheduled a presentation by Marathon County Health Department regarding fluoridation in the drinking water. The health department was unable to make it here this morning, so they did provide some information, and we did put some information in the packets for you. And it's an item that is gaining. I mean, I think as periodically it does have. It comes up as an item of discussion, but more recently there have been some new studies that have come out. There have been cities around the country that are eliminating the fluoridation. They're taking the proactive step, and we felt that it was something we should put on for the Water Commission to be aware of, that this is out there as a concern. We'd like you to see it. I mean, the data we have. There's quite a bit of data out there, so you've probably not had an opportunity to digest all of this. I was hoping that this would come in the form of a presentation from our health department. So we will reschedule her to come back and do that at a future meeting. But if there's anybody who's had a chance to look at this, would like to discuss anything at this point, please let me know your thoughts. Mr. Jean.
It seems like when I was working that the level of fluoridation that we did was reduced. Is that correct, Scott?
It is. It was 1 to 1.5 at one point. Now it is down to 0.6 to 0.8 milligrams a liter.
It is also true that we have natural fluoridation in some of our wells.
Correct.
Okay, so it's not necessarily,
We
we supplement it, but,
yeah.
okay.
So I think our metering goal right now is at 0.7. You've got the range.
Yeah, we average about 0.7.
Okay. Mr. Force.
I realize we're not going to discuss this at any length until a future meeting, but is there pushback within the community from some groups about fluoride? Usually this question comes up in a community when there is a community group suggesting that we not fluoridate the drinking water, and I'm wondering if that's happening locally. I have not experienced that or had any questions regarding that.
There is some local push. There's also a recent, and when I say recent, I think it was September 24th, I believe, there was a report, a DHS subcommittee report, 324-page report on it. We had Scott looking at that. I don't know that we have complete analysis of it. I sent that report to the health department, and the feedback that I got from Laura Scuderi is that she would come in and brief us on that. So I was hoping to hear some more of her thoughts on that. But that's out there, and I can send you, we can get you the links to that if we haven't already done that. I would recommend then that you take a look at that before the next meeting. But it's fresher data, it's new data. I know that, as you mentioned, it seems to come up periodically, but there are more and more cities. There's a couple that actually just this last week voted to, I think it's Paducah, I can't remember the name of the cities, but there have been cities that have voted to eliminate it. But some of the considerations that we'll have to have, and that's where Laura can talk to, there's a dental association, there's a maybe Scott can speak to that. If we were to eliminate it, there has to be notice to area dentists because they treat certain conditions differently, or the preventive medicine is different for children who don't have access to fluorinated water. Topical application or something like that.
Yeah, correct. And just the way they treat fluoridation through the dentist's office in communities that do not fluoridate their water is different. Laura's going to be an excellent speaker on this. The study that you're referencing, it cites 1.5 milligrams per liter fluoridation in the water, and they're drawing some links to developmental issues, but they're not solid links, and there's still some speculation or some room in some of the work that was done that it's not exact or precise. Here again, it's a report, and there's two sides of the story. I guess fluoridation costs the city about $20,000 a year. If there's benefit to that, and if you read through the packet, I thought that was a pretty good packet. It shows that there can be a cost savings to the community for adding fluoridation. So, I don't know.
So, the report does come through a DHS, so it needs to be presented by somebody who's read it and is versed in the language. It's 324 pages. They have some conclusions in it, and essentially it's the 1.5, but the links to below that are, I don't know if are direct, but we definitely want to have a more full-bodied discussion on this as we go. Mr. Robinson, no. Mr. Force? Okay. We will bring that back next time as soon as we can get the health department back in here. All right, up next is item 4, discussion of possible action on utility operational budgets proposed for 2025. We do have Mary Ann here. If Eric, you want to speak to that first?
Well, we sat down with Mary Ann, the mayor, as well as Ben and Scott. We all kind of went through the budget pretty much line item by line item. And what you have in front of you, Mary Ann printed out, and I think she would be the one best to go through it and answer questions. So thanks, Mary Ann.
Yeah, sure. So good morning. So each of the budgets is organized in the same fashion. This is our second year using adaptive budget software. We still are struggling a little bit with reporting, as well as some other issues. But we start, the first page for each one has just a basic income statement summary of the budget, and then I also have on that first page the capital budget so that you can see what projects will be underway in 2025. And then that's followed by an itemized detailed budget, which I think provides adopted of the 24, prior year actuals, and the budget request, and then the changes. So when we look at the wastewater treatment budget, you can see total revenues. Oh, and just as a backdrop, so we're using the modified accrual basis for our budgeting. You know, with the big projects that both of the utilities have taken on, our real focus is on cash. And modified accrual is looking more at what the impact of your transactions are each year to your cash. So looking at revenues up to 60 days out. And you can see for the wastewater budget, we're showing just a small increase in cash at the end of the year, $4,000, give or take. And the big story with the wastewater treatment is all of the capital projects. So we have those outlined. Right now, it's showing about $10.5 million of capital projects. The largest project is the Headwork Screening Project, which went out for bid and is going to be starting in the near future, probably fourth quarter of '24. The project actually came in almost $1 million under this estimate. You can see by the chart that it's getting loan forgiveness from the DNR, clean water, and we were using $800,000 of ARPA funds. So we're in the midst, or I should say Eric is in the midst of working with the DNR to find out what that final financing will look like. And then the goal is to take that $800,000 of ARPA funds and apply it, go before Finance and Council to apply it to the lift station project. So that will help with that project and reduce the need to borrow money and to use cash. So that will help us for that project. And, you know, looking at the financial statements that were included in your packet, you know, I think the wastewater, obviously it has had its rates since, I think it was April of '23. So it's had a period of time to settle into those rates. And its cash position is about $2 million right now. And that seems to be staying pretty stable. So I think not a lot of concerns on the wastewater budget. Again, you can see that we do have a column of debt proceeds. We are not sure whether we would apply for clean water funds for that, or whether it would be a regular revenue bond. But that's really, I guess, all I have to say. And it does have the two new positions are included in this budget. So that's everything I got for wastewater.
Alder Watson.
So I know it's just one of the light items, but I was looking at water bulk sales. It looks like the revenue for that's going to be a lot bigger this next year. I guess I wondered what water bulk sales were.
Oh, so are you in the water budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, okay.
It's like 46457 is the row. It looks like it's going to have a pretty good increase in projected revenue.
I'm looking. Oh, bulk sale. Oh, I mean, I guess it does show a sizable increase, but all of the numbers are relatively small. Prior year was, I think, 10,199.
Yeah.
Budget 12.5. Our budget request is 38.7.
Yep. I just wondered what it was too. What are water bulk sales?
I'll let Scott.
Oh, okay.
We do have a couple of water fill stations, so there's
Yeah.
one at the old meter shop, and there's one at one of our well houses, where we do sell bulk water to contractors, mostly boring companies, people that just need bulk water, irrigation, landscapers, stuff like
It's a self-service overhead spigot. They pull up by the water shop and ring up their load and punch a ticket and pay for it.
that. Correct.
So that seems to be getting more demand.
It
There's more
is,
demand.
especially with the amount of drillers and stuff that are in town.
Okay.
All right, any further questions on the wastewater before we go back to the water? Okay, Mary Ann, you're going to tee up
Okay,
the
so
water.
for the water.
Well, we do have some
Oh,
questions.
we do have a question. This is wastewater now.
Well, for both of them,
Okay.
I don't mean to take John's time, but for both of them, unless I examine this more closely than I have, we don't have prior year. We have proposed for 2025 on the summary sheets.
On the summary sheet, it's just the current year's budget. The detail is on the back sheet. Like I said, we're really struggling with reporting out of our new financial software, so we're kind of living within the parameters that we have.
All right, well, I would like to see, as a non-financial person, a summary that shows the operating budget for the coming year and how it compares against the operating
Okay.
budget for the prior year, and then also how we performed against the budget for prior year. I mean, was our prior year budget number adequate, inadequate?
So if you, I mean, I think you can see that from the detail if you look
It's in the
at,
detail, but I wanted to see it,
in summary, okay?
you know, as a way to quickly make comparison.
Sure.
What we're budgeting this year, what we budgeted last year, what we spent last year.
Okay.
Because a budget is one thing, and a spend sheet is another.
Right. And in the detail, there are last year's actuals. I just want to make sure you understand. In the detail, last year's actuals are there, this year's budget, and the proposed budget are there. Every day, we're getting reporting enhancements, so I will take that back and work on that for you. I can just email it in an email.
So to Mary Ann's point, we're probably several weeks behind because of some software rollout issues. We're all suffering up here, especially the directors, to try to get the data up to date, and then we have about a week to present it to council the first time.
But we have gone through line item by line item, and I feel confident in the budget. So we have spent.
It's the software, so you're right. I
We've
didn't mean
spent
to.
a lot of time on the budget. Oh, that's okay. I'm just saying, we have spent time line item to line item, and we feel confident. As I said, especially with the wastewater, because those rates went in 23, I mean, obviously, one of the big concerns is that we don't overspend of what we collect. And so I feel strongly that we have good rate revenue estimates. And I also, because the superintendents are doing their budgets, I reviewed it, Eric reviewed it, and I thought that, the wastewater budget was very accurate compared to historic trends, and we have the most up-to-date debt service. Obviously, debt service is changing as we draw on those loans. But at this point, with sewer in particular, until we have these new projects, there isn't any new debt. That's what's kind of disclosed in the financials. So water utility, a couple of unique things. Oh,
Mr. Robinson.
So you've got a transfer to general fund
yes.
in there, but where are we, could you explain that, and then where are we with the pilot?
So the pilot, we did have the meeting with Ellers in August, and we will be bringing that back as part of the budget process. Obviously, that's a council decision. When we were working on the water budget initially, there was some shortfall I guess, in the water utility budget. And I was going to get to this when we got to the water budget. We did make some changes, and you can see in the water budget on that summary sheet, there's $1 million intergovernmental revenue. That is funding for the media exchange, because there is $1 million in the budget for the media exchange. And so we do have, I don't know what the total grant amount is, Eric?
About 1.6. It's about 1.67. It was the congressionally directed spending that we received through the Baldwin's office. We made that application in '23, I think, right, Scott? Yeah.
So the budget proposes funding that entire $1 million with that grant, which is a eligible cost.
Correct.
I think the thing is, we don't know, and I don't pretend to know what these guys know, but in our conversations, we don't actually know what the costs are going to be for the replacement. So it made sense, basically, to step into our operations, and if we're going to budget $1 million of that media, we would budget the grant. Now, if operations stabilizes, we could use it for something else. We may not need a whole $1 million for that replacement in '25. So it basically offset those costs. So you can see the grant, and then there is $1 million for that replacement in, it is in chemicals and building materials.
Yeah, I think the one thing with that 1.67 million, right, the intent of that was actually to offset our granular activated carbon project, right? So we had emerging contaminants funding, we had regular principal forgiveness from the DNR, and then we had a loan component. And the idea was that 1.67 was going to go against the loan. After we received that, the DNR came back and said, well, you can't, we're not going to allow you to do that. If you use that 1.67 on the project, we're going to reduce your principal forgiveness. So we had been working with the EPA to establish another avenue to expend those dollars. There's no expiration date on them, but we definitely want them to be advantageous for the utility and the payers. So that's what we're working on now. And one of the expenses is they have to be related to PFAS, and obviously this is directly related to PFAS. Yeah.
So it's on the water side, though?
Yep.
It's on the water side, yes.
So there's a transfer to the
Yes.
general fund in here, the last item under expenses.
Yep.
Should be 1.49
No,
there.
this is for the sewer. It's
That we did.
$485,000.
That we did this year, but we're not doing next year. What, is that can you explain that? Or,
I think that actually shows up maybe on a different line item.
so if the pilot has not been addressed and the council is going to address it, it is an expense, but it's not reflected in here. If they decide to keep the pilot, what happens to the budget?
It is.
It is in here, but I thought we
It's in a
discussed it,
different-
1.49 here on the,
Yeah.
on the revenue, on that,
On the revenue.
Revenue,
But
other financing
It is in the sewer
uses?
utility, it just got combined with other things, but I can't seem to locate it right now. It's in there.
And I would just share that the county is behind on its budget as well.
Yeah.
oh, thank you. We're in good hands.
Horrible. Yeah, I'll find that for you and point it out. I know it's in there, though.
And on the sewer side, that's like 400 and some
Yeah,
thousand, Marion?
485, yeah.
485.
So just an overall question, final question on this, but as we're looking at the water, it's a water rate issue, but it impacts the wastewater because they're tied together in terms of income. Are we seeing now that we've got a few quarters with the new rates aid? I know that there's an incremental decrease in the water rate income, but are we anticipating changes in practices with irrigation and residential use that might throw off the revenue side.
Well, we just invested $1 million in meters, so we're looking to replace meters. I'll let Scott talk to that, but I think our intention is to start picking up some of that revenue on the new meters.
Through the water loss, chargeback of what was
Correct.
historically water loss.
Correct. Am I right there, Scott?
Correct. And then our rates have only been in for what? Not
Since
even.
July 1.
Then July.
Yeah,
last
so
year.
we haven't realized a full year of rates either.
Right.
So,
And the water utility right now has a cash balance of about 300,000, but it was, close to zero and even a negative at some point. So this is, an area that we're really concerned about. Another, I guess, justification for doing the media exchange grant. And you can see in both the capital projects that we're, trying to use ARPA dollars and TID financing when we can. As I said, with the sewer of reallocating some ARPA dollars, also in water, it shows the $800,000 of meter replacement out of ARPA. And then lead service line had a budget. We won't be using that for ARPA, so the goal is to bring that back to council to replace some SCADA equipment that was going to be budgeted for in '25.
Right.
And that would then use those ARPA dollars. And the water projects are, less than sewers at 4.1 million versus the 10 million for sewer. But I'll get you that summarized report.
Well, I think I've found it. On the last page of the water budget, you have total expenses. Some of prior year actuals, so the actuals were almost 17. The budget was 12.7.
Right. And
So,
in this situation too, capital is in here. I could separate that out for you. So that is going to, change because we're looking at actual capital outlay, the cash outlay for it.
okay, but in response to the question I might get, the 17,494 and change is the budget request, and last year's actuals, not the budget, the actuals were 16,999. So
Yep.
there's your difference. It's up about 500,000.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the answer I'm looking for.
Okay.
And I would just appreciate not having to thread through all the numbers
Yeah.
to find that. Thank you.
Understood.
Mr. Jean?
My question is, are we in a position to approve this operating budget? Are you looking for that?
Well, I think, how do we have it agendized? We're looking to, Mary Ann, have we in the past approved it at this level? I think when,
You have not. Isn't that the understanding, Eric, that you haven't been bringing this to committee to
Yeah, I
approve
think
in the
we've just
past?
updated the commission on the operating budget, and it's always just been the capital budget, but,
but
yeah.
I think it's worthy of an advisory, but I think we also, there's a few things we need to talk about. Are you finished, Mary Ann?
Yeah.
Okay, pilot. One of the things we discussed is lowering the pilot by $100,000 to 1.49 million from 1.59 million. I know that wasn't always that popular, but I think it's something that we should talk about. Did you?
Well, and really, it's not the utility's decision, right? It's a council, because the council's the one that has to make the decision to forgive the pilot. Obviously, because we're behind in the budget process, and this last year was a revaluation for us, so, like looking at, and right now we're waiting for because the state does the manufacturing assessments, we're still waiting for our final numbers on what our assessed value is to really be able to analyze the impact. We just got our levy, our expenditure restraint calculation from the state this morning. We're still waiting on transportation aids. So we have, quite a bit of information that we're still waiting to feed into the budget. But that definitely, like came across loud and clear from council that they wanted to look at the pilot. It also came, I thought, across loud and clear from the financial advisor that even with a pilot reduction, it wasn't going to translate into a change in the rates for the consumer. So you're going to, I think that's one of the things that needs to be balanced. And as, maybe didn't come clear, and it's not a justification, but we have a significantly better system than we had before. And our consumers are enjoying great water right now. And I think that's worth something. And I also think that when you look around the state, everyone is facing the same challenges because we're all under the same mandates and we're all experiencing PFAS problems. And so we're seeing rate increases all over the state. And so while at this point we look like an outlier, maybe we won't in a very short period of time.
So the reduction, the potential reduction to 1.49 wouldn't necessarily trigger a rate case, because as we discussed, and if, I think I sent you, I hope I sent that to the commission, the article from, I think it's Frank Schaefer.
Fred.
On the PSC, and we heard it from our elders here, the PSC math. Oddly enough, we can reduce expenses. We could still get a rate increase because they're looking for us to build a what do you call it, reserve that we
A rate
don't
of return.
have.
And for
a
us,
rate of-
it's important for us to have that because we have no cash right now. So, like for us to say we don't need a rate of return, I think is false because we do, because we have no cash and we need to build up some cash reserves. And every day when we go to replace mains, they cost that much more. So that's the other thing that rate of return is supposed to help you with, right? Because you're looking at depreciation. Depreciation is how much you spent. Some of those mains are 50 years old. It's depreciating that 50-year-old cost, and we need to replace something today.
So philosophically, the reduction of $100,000 is not, it may not translate because of the PSC math into a direct reduction of rates, but it will reduce long-term upward pressure on rates. So, I think it's worthy of the discussion, and it doesn't have to be decided on here, although we did put it down for discussion and possible action, and we could take an advisory vote if anybody wanted to comment further on that. I would entertain a motion, and of course, as we mentioned, historically, we don't approve it, but I think at this level, you're privy to the data, so why not?
We could also change that moving forward too, that the commission sees and accepts the operating budget on an annual basis prior to going to finance and council, I do think it's good that this commission sees the operating budget, discusses it, understands. I think that the commission has a unique knowledge of the utility, throughout the year on where expenses are, operations, and how things are going. So, yeah, my 2 cents.
So, Mr. Robinson.
Well, I agree, and I appreciate you bringing the budget in because we don't have context for many of our discussions without seeing that operational budget and to see what's there. In terms of the pilot, ultimately, that's a council decision, and one of the factors is the advantage of the pilot is we capture revenue from some sources that traditionally don't contribute to the property tax.
Right.
And that would be through your nonprofits, your churches, your schools, and others that all have costs and burdens on the system in terms of some of the capital projects and others. So we're able to capture from an expanded base. The overall question is where our rates relative to others. But I think that it is helpful to bring it in. I don't know that, given the struggles with pulling this together, that I still don't have a lot of context in comparing one year to another because we're sort of blending in capital in certain parts of the budget and not in others. It would be nice to have an operational budget and a capital budget going forward to fully understand, and it would just take some time to fully understand that. But I do appreciate the bringing it in. I understand the transition from Kayenta, which was a dinosaur software package, into new systems, and hopefully in the future we'll get, on a regular basis, perhaps we get quarterly reports so we have an understanding of where we are.
Thank you. And without a motion or a second, we don't have to vote on this. So I think it was important that we talked about it, and you had the proper context and you have the option. All right. Without further discussion, we'll move on to the next item, discussion and possible action approving special assessments for homeowners to abandon their private well. Scott, you want to take this one?
Sure. Currently, we're on a renewal term for private wells within the city. Wells are either required to be permitted, and that means they need to be inspected for plumbing, cross connections, and then take a bacteriological safe sample. We have some wells that the owners don't feel they have the resources to abandon their wells, but yet the wells aren't safe, so we cannot permit them. This would just give those owners another tool to get those wells taken care of. Right now, the code reads that we can go through a long process and then finally cause the abandonment of the well, which would be assessed to the property. This would just be a shortcut, give the owner an option to assess the work and not have to go through wasting the resources to get to that point. I don't feel this is going to be a major item. We probably have a few people that may take advantage of this. There are grant programs through the DNR, but they're tied to income, and some of these folks don't qualify for those grants. So this would give them another tool.
Mr. Robinson.
I would move that we authorize creating a special assessment program for homeowners to abandon their private wells.
Second here.
Motion from Robinson, second by Force to adopt the special assessment for abandoning private wells. Mr. Jean, was that a hand? No. Any further comments, questions? Mary Ann
You
has a
said how many years it was going to be paid back? Does the?
5 years.
5 years, okay.
Yeah, 5 years. Typical abandonment or average is about $1,200, so it'd be just a little over three. Or not
So
quite
$1,200 over, okay.
Yeah, over 5 years.
Okay. Without saying further comment, questions, I would, for all those in favor of accepting the special assessments for abandoning their wells, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Item 6, discussion and possible action approving Amendment 2 for engineering services for construction inspection of the Headworks project, screening project that Mary Ann mentioned here a bit ago.
Yeah, so this is adding on to the Donahue original project that went through planning, design, and now would oversee construction of the work that was just bid. So,
Mr. Robinson.
I just had some questions because we're approaching 9% for construction oversight costs. It just seems high in, where are we? They're charging out at $180, $190 an hour. Do we have the right people in there? And I think given the fact that we're getting pressures relative to cost, how do we make sure we've got the right people at the right meetings at the right time? And are there opportunities for us to ratchet down those dollars? I know at one time I thought that the industry was at about 7% versus 9%. So it seems high.
yeah, I think like typically when I look at these, their overall engineering percentage is about 16% of the project, which is really within range, right? Like, we typically go up to around 18% on projects, depending on, and this isn't a typical project, there's some complexities with this project, right? Rehab buildings, things like that. And this is, I don't know, the duration of this project is not a construction season. It's going through the end of 25? 26. 26 is final completion. So, I would say, we have seen engineering costs go up, but I would say percentage-wise for the overall cost of the project, I would say we're still within the maybe a little bit on the higher end, but still within the bounds of a typical project. Coverage kind of from cradle to grave type project. And we did discuss with Donahue and had an individual swapped out for one of the project managers for a little bit lesser cost, yeah, on an hourly rate. So just.
Mr. Jean.
I would first move that we ratify the amendment for engineering services. But I do have a comment. I know Ben wanted that change right from the beginning, and I think it makes a lot of sense because of the way we get our final product for the sludge. I think it's imperative that we do the best job we can at that point in treatment, which is preliminary to it coming into the plant. So that's the rationale for ratifying this on my part.
Okay, so I have a motion from Jean on ratifying or approving the amendment for engineering services. Would I have a second? Is there a second? From Watson. All right, questions? Mr. Forrest.
Obviously, and, screening is critical to the process, but just for my information, why are we doing this after the wastewater treatment plant expansion, and why, and I'm not pointing an accusing finger in any direction, I'm just asking, why was this Headworks project not included in the original project?
It was originally, but it was removed as a cost savings effort, if I recall. It was a cost savings option that they offered, and at the time they elected
It was an ad alternate to the bid.
alternate.
Yeah, and that was one of the ones that was not selected.
Mr. Jean.
If I remember correctly, that was partially updated maybe 10, 12 years ago or 15 years ago. So it wasn't in the same age as the other parts of the plant. I can see why we should have done it right away, but we took advantage of the savings.
Yep.
Mr. Forrest.
So, Ben, what's in there now? And I haven't been over to look at it. I should have done that, but what kind of headworks do we have at the moment?
Right now, we have Huber step screens in place. They haven't been maintained properly because of the complexity of taking the screens out of the channels and that through the roof. The new screens will be, the maintenance will be much easier, user-friendly. So we'll be able to, we won't have to lift them through the roof with a
These are
crane.
fine screens?
It's a fine screen, yes.
What was the,
Hydrodyne, center flow.
okay.
We were gonna go with the Huber units, but it was found out later on, because of this compaction of the Headworks building, they weren't able to convey the solids upstairs. There wasn't a manufacturer that would guarantee a conveyance system that would to move it upstairs. So the whole system was revised and the Hydrodyne center flows were chosen. They were able to do that, so.
Further questions on the engineering services amendment? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of accepting the amendment 2 for the engineering services, say aye. Any opposed? All right, up next is then the discussion on the item itself, approving contract with JF Ahern for the construction of the Headworks screening project.
So you'll see in your packet the bids that had come in. We had 3 bidders, and then along with the alternates, and that would actually be for the screens. One alternate is for one screen, and the second one's for another screen. So low bid for that project was from JF Ahern. That is the recommendation.
Mr. Robinson.
I'll move for acceptance.
Motion from Robinson to accept, a second by Jean. Further discussion on the contract to Ahern for the Headworks project. Mr. Jean.
This would just be a recommendation technically, because the board is the one that does the final.
The board accepted the bids. This is for acceptance of essentially the contract, yeah, yeah. And the contract is with legal, so it's, yeah.
Mr. Force.
We've had good results with Ahern.
Yeah, I mean, they were a subcontractor of Myron at the water treatment facility with the issue with the piping and the coatings. That wasn't Ahern's issue, that was the supplier of the piping. They overcoated the pipes, but we did have to deal with them. But essentially, we were dealing with Myron, which was a complication, but yeah.
Seeing no further discussion, those in favor of accepting the contract, or approving the contract, rather, for JF Ahern Headworks Screening Project, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Up next, item number 8, discussion and update from the Consumer Confidence Report Task Force. And this was a little ad hoc task force put together to promote Wausau Water Works utilities in a better light, or at least more of a promoting effort than a dry report. And I think, Mr. Force, are you leading that one up? Do you want to talk to that?
Yes, I sent out I apologize for the lateness of it, summary of our meeting in September. Watson, Force, and Boers met to talk about the Consumer Confidence Report. We understand that the tables that were the bulk, the focus of our attention are required, and we must include them in the reports, but we felt there is an opportunity to communicate more effectively about our utility. And some of our recommendations were that we include a brief narrative explaining the tables in understandable language, maybe including a series of little-known facts about water, latest news from the water utility, and graphics that might help illustrate our messages, possibly depicting the water treatment and distribution systems. We also felt that our website needs to be reviewed and improved if it's going to be an effective way of communicating with our customers. So I'm not sure that we came up with any actions at the meeting. These were recommendations, and if you're okay with us proceeding, I think we would try to get inside these tasks and figure out who's going to do what and how we can do them. I don't see us hiring outside creative support to do this. I think it's something we could do with staff and with members of the commission. But I think overall, I think, and I think the commission has agreed, we need to improve what we're putting out there.
Thank you. For the website, we're talking specifically the new city website, or are we talking something separate?
Go ahead, Scott.
I think, Jim, our discussion was wrapped around the city website, the water tab in the city website.
So the water tab, okay, okay. Mr. Robinson.
Just as an aside, and I shared this with Eric and Jim, the DNR's, the Natural Resources Board just last week approved a scoping statement for revisions to NR 809, the Administrative Code for the Safe Drinking Water Act that governs the Consumer Confidence Reports. There's a hearing on the scoping statement on October 3rd. We may want to track that. It's a long, arduous process. It can take 30 months, but we may want to be paying attention to what is in that consumer confidence, the requirements that will be in the revised 809 going forward.
I think what, if I can just conclude, I think what we're looking for is a format and content that is more reader-friendly, rather than just throwing columns and columns of data out there and expecting people to understand. If you remember, I brought in a couple of comments from my neighbors, which basically said they don't read it, or if they do try to read it, they don't find it intelligible. And that's no accusation or blame on our part, it's the way it is. I think our little group feels that we can do some things to improve the readability and understandability of those documents.
I would agree. If we're not over communicating, we're under communicating. Thank you. Welcome. All right, up next, discussion on a new date for November 5th meeting. Okay, so what we have is the election on that day, and due to the election here, this is the main count, and seeing that we need to have, or we prefer to have this broadcast, we would need either do that on a different day in here, or possibly moving it to another location on the 5th, but we would have to discuss that. But I thought maybe we could meet at the water treatment plant, use a conference room there, but if we're required to broadcast, maybe we could record it and then put it back out on YouTube, but I don't know the ins and outs of that. Alder Watson.
I would be game to move it to the 4th, the Monday, so we could at least keep that day for elections.
Okay, so one preference for Monday. Any other comments? I guess we're looking at calendars here. Take a look and let me know. Or Mr. Jean.
I'm okay with the 4th or the 6th, but the 5th, I'm working the polls.
Oh, you're a poll person too. Sure.
Yes.
Okay. I think it makes sense to not do it on that day.
I would support Sarah's suggestion. The 4th would work, 6th would work too.
Okay, so you're good. Anyone else have conflict on the 4th?
And just further, we don't get a lot of public participation, and we've had that discussion on this commission for a long time. But by changing the place, it's just one more change that the public has to deal with. So keeping it in the same place at the same time and just moving it a day, to me, is the easiest change to make.
Okay, I'm game with that. 4th, I think I'm good with that. And Gina can put that out then as the date. If there's any conflicts that come up later, let us know. Or that you discover when you check your calendars. All right, we are at the point where I would accept the motion to adjourn. From Robinson, second by Jean, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? See you later. Thank you.
Thank you.